Well, hey guys, it's Darwin here with another round of my top backpacking tips and tricks that I've learned over the past 9 years and 14,000 miles of hiking. All the little things that I do every single time I head out into the backcountry to make my time on trail more efficient and enjoyable. Today's video is specifically centered around hygiene. All the little things that I've done over and over and over again throughout the years to keep myself a little cleaner on trail, combat injuries, and keep myself fresh while I'm out putting in the miles. And like usual, most of these things are pretty much no-brainers. They're kind of goofy and honestly things that I take for granted just because I've been doing them for so long on the trail. But these are some things that might help you along on your backpacking journey. All right, so to jump right in, the first set of tips or tricks or hacks that I have for you today are centered around your feet. Those things that are gonna help carry you along on the trail and give you a successful backpacking trip. Making sure that you keep your feet happy so they keep you happy. Now, one of the biggest causes of blisters and foot problems on the trail can simply be from dirt and sand and all the stuff that falls into your sock while you're hiking. It can wear you out, it can give you blisters. So one of the biggest things that I've been doing for years that I always make sure that I can do if I have the chance and I have the water available is to clean my feet. I always clean my feet on trail. Now, I recently talked about this in a Q&A because someone asked me what some of my best tips and tricks were for foot care, and that's number one for me. Most times when I get to camp at the end of the day, if there's a water source, I will go down to the stream or the river or the little spring, and I will take something like my buff or carry something like one of these light load towels, and I'll make sure that I clean my feet off. I usually take my socks off, I'll kind of beat the socks to get all the dust and dirt and sand out of them, and then I will clean my feet off. Now, when I get back to my tent for the night, I will actually swap my socks out. And this is the next thing that I always make sure that I do when I'm out hiking the trail. Even though I try to stay ultralight, not carry too much clothes, I always carry an extra pair of socks. So I'm usually hiking in one pair, and then one pair is in my pack. And at the end of the night, basically, I just swap them back and forth. So instead of carrying like 5 days of socks for a 5-day trip, I just have 2. But by switching them back and forth every single night, it's making sure that I'm not rubbing the same spot on my foot with the same sock that might have a speck of dirt or sand or something in it, creating blisters and causing problems for my feet. Now, what happens if I do get a blister? Well, this is something I talked about years ago and I got a lot of scoff for it, and that is if I get a blister, I do the old thread and needle trick. I don't pop my blister. I said this years ago and everybody's like, you shouldn't pop blisters. And I agree, you shouldn't pop blisters, but sometimes it's good to drain the blister. Because you know that if you have a blister, it's full of liquid, and you go hiking on it, it starts to hurt because it's starting to rub up against a sock, it's starting to rub up against your shoe, and that can actually cause it to pop, which is not a good thing. So by taking a piece of thread and a needle and threading it through one end of the blister and then out the other end, I cut off both ends. And what this allows the blister to do is allows it to drain but not seal back up. Have you ever popped a blister and all the nasty liquid came out of it and then the next day it was filled back up? Well, by doing this, it allows that thread to stay in there and continually wick out that moisture. You just slap a Band-Aid or a piece of Leuko tape over it and it allows it to heal faster. It's a great trick to keep your feet happy and healthy on trail and take care of those blisters. So keeping a needle and a thread and a little thing of Leuko tape in my pack is definitely a trick that I've learned over the years that I will not hike without. And then the last thing for your feet is really making sure that you keep your nails trimmed because black toenails can happen. Now, I have 2 forever black toenails that I got back in like 2014 when racing triathlon. So that's something that I've been dealing with for years, but to make sure that the rest of my toenails don't get injured, it doesn't cause any pain or cause any problems or get black toenails, I like to trim my toenails when I'm out on the trail. Now, instead of carrying something like a pocket knife and a pair of nail clippers, I have always carried one of these little Swiss Army knife minis. And I guess this answers another question. People are always, where is your knife? Why don't you have a knife? I do carry a knife, but all I've ever carried in all the thousands of miles that I've hiked is one of these little bitty blades. This is all I've ever needed to cut tape or string or cheese or anything else that I've had to do on the trail. That is it. But the other great thing about this and why I carry these instead of another blade is because it also has a pair of scissors in it. So instead of carrying just a pair of nail clippers to trim my nails, I carry a pair of these and I use these to trim my nails. So it's a great way to take two pieces of gear, put it in one, and again, after thousands of miles, this is all I've ever needed to have a knife and keep my toenails trimmed and keep my toes happy. The next couple of hacks come down to keeping my feet and my legs fresh while I'm out putting in the miles throughout the day. Now, I'm somebody that likes to hike big miles. Usually on a through hike, I'll hike anywhere between 20 to 30 miles a day. And there's a lot of people that, number one, you don't know why somebody would hike that many miles. I like hiking big miles, but other people are just saying like, my legs are wore out after 10 or 15 miles. Well, one of the things that you'll always notice that I do if you watch my trail videos is number one, when I stop to take a break for lunch or maybe just a snack, and especially at the end of the day, I always take my socks off, always. And that's to let my feet breathe because moisture and dirt and all kinds of crap gets trapped in that sock and it starts to wear your feet out. You can get sore feet, and again, it can cause blisters. So I always take my socks off, let my feet air out. And again, I kind of knock my socks out and get all the dirt and stuff out of there. So that keeps my feet happy. The other thing that you'll notice that I always do when I stop and take a break, and especially when I get to camp at night, you've probably seen this a ton in my videos, is I always prop my feet up. Like after I get done eating dinner, I'll kind of put my headphones in, maybe listen to a podcast or something, and then I'll get my feet elevated on something like a tree or a rock. I do it a lot when I stop to take a break because if I've already hiked 10 or 15 miles and I still have another 10 or 15 to go, I want to make sure that my legs are as fresh as possible. This is something I learned years ago back when I used to race triathlon, the RICE method, right? Let's see, rest, ice, compression, elevation. But making sure that you get those feet, those calves, those knees, those quads up above your heart so you can let all of that lactated blood come back down into your core and replace it with fresh blood. So it's a great thing to do to keep you fresh, to keep your feet fresh, to keep your legs fresh when you're out putting in the miles, and just again at the end of the day so you can make sure you're getting good sleep and you're ready to go on the next day. All right, next up are a few tricks that specifically pertain to trying to stay clean on the trail. Now, trying to stay clean while you're out on a multi-day backpacking trip or a thru hike is very hard. You're usually pretty nasty and dirty, but there's a handful of little things that I do to try to stay fresh, to try to somewhat keep my hygiene up. And the first one comes down to something that I started using years ago that I get tons of questions about, and that is using a bidet. So the reason I started using a bidet instead of toilet paper on the trail really boils down to two things. Well, number one, it keeps me from using toilet paper. I don't want to waste so much toilet paper, and you should never leave toilet paper in the backcountry, leave no trace. So I never ever want to have to carry out my poopy paper. That's absolutely gross to me. I just don't want to pack in nasty crap paper into my pack with the rest of my stuff and carry it out for multiple days and then dump it. So instead, I started using a bidet. Because I'm not carrying toilet paper, I also don't worry about having to find it. Have you ever been on a multi-day backpacking trip and you've run out of toilet paper? And then you get into a town and you're trying to find a gas station or a porta potty or something where you can steal a little bit of toilet paper out of it. You take it out of the dispenser, you roll it up in a little thing. You know what I'm talking about. You've done that. Well, this keeps me from not having to get toilet paper and wasting it. As long as I have water and a water bottle, I'm good to go. That's the first reason. The other main reason is because obviously it keeps me cleaner. So not only am I wiping by using this bidet, but I'm also keeping my crack clean. After multiple days of having to go number 2 every morning on the trail and sweating and dirt, your nether regions get pretty nasty. Yeah, they do. So being able to actually wash your ass.
You got to wash your ass.
Every day on the trail is pretty amazing. And this kind of brings me to something I want to talk about, and that's questions that I've gotten a ton of times about using a bidet, and that's the fact that, I put it on my water bottle, right? And I usually carry one water bottle on the trail. Not only is this the water bottle that I drank out of, but it's also my bidet bottle. And people always say it's gross, it's unhygienic. So I wanted to explain how I actually use my bidet and a little bit of a pro tip. So I do what's called the break dancer. I think a lot of people think that when you use a bidet, you kind of get it right up in your crack, and no, not at all. What I do is I go out when I'm ready to go number 2, I dig my cat hole, a proper cat hole, and then I drop trowel, I kind of stand over the cat hole, and then I lean back doing what I call the break dancer. I put one arm back, then I grab my bidet, and at kind of a 90-degree angle, I guess it's a 90-degree angle, I shoot the water. So if you think about it, if your butt's here and the hole's here, you're shooting water this way and water is draining this way. So there is no chance of splashback. So I've never had to worry about getting poop particles or gross water on my bidet or anywhere near my bottle. If you're doing that, you're definitely using a bidet wrong. So by doing the break dancer, by using a bidet, I can stay clean, I can stay hygienic, and I don't have to use toilet paper. Because I do use a bidet, and because I do want to stay clean, the next thing comes down to soap. So for years, I never carried soap on trail. I would always wait till I got into a town where there was a place where I could take a shower or wash my hands or do laundry and use soap that I found or buy it someplace, but I would never carry soap with me. Now, I am a big fan and love Dr. Bronner soap. It's a natural castile soap. It's much safer for the outdoors, but obviously I don't want to carry a huge bottle. This stuff is super concentrated, so you don't need a lot of it to go far. So what I started doing was buying these little bitty mini Visine bottles. You guys have probably seen these in gas stations or airports. These little bitty Visine bottles, I drain out the Visine. If you take it, you can actually pop this top off. I'm not gonna try to pop it off, you know? There you go. You can pop the top off the Visine bottle, and then I fill it up with Dr. Bronner's. This amount of soap will usually last me for a good week because it's so concentrated. So if I'm out on the trail and let's say that I get maybe a little bit of poop particles on my hand from using my bidet, not here, but here where I'm leaned back, I can put a couple little bitty drops in my hand and I can wash up. I also use this to take a shower. I use it for my hair, I use it to wash my face, my legs, my body, and I use it for laundry. So instead of carrying a big bottle of soap or a bar of soap or something like that, you can just get one of these little Visine bottles. You can fill it up, and then I usually take a nail or a needle or something and make the hole a little bit bigger because the holes are kind of small and kind of hard to get the soap out of. And then I just always make sure this is in my pack and I can use it to stay clean on the trail. And then the next thing comes down to keeping my teeth clean. Something that backpackers and hikers are absolutely obsessed with is shaving weight on their toothbrush. This is something that has always drove me nuts and I've always made fun of. People will cut the handle off their toothbrush to keep it ultra light. People will take full-size toothbrushes and cut the handle down so it's this little bitty nub of a toothbrush, or they'll use something like one of these little goofy things. These are usually like free when you buy gear from Garage Grown Gear. But the problem I have with these is you're taking this and you're getting your hands basically in your mouth. If you really want to reach back, you kind of almost have to put your fingers in your mouth. And I'm good. If you guys remember when I talked about my chip hack, eating chips with a spoon, I do not want to put my hands anywhere in my mouth. I don't want to cross-contaminate that. Because again, if I don't use my soap, I have no clue what's on my hands. It's a good way to get norovirus. It's a good way to just get stuff you don't want in your mouth. So I don't want to stick my fingers in my mouth. And I don't want to chop the end off of a toothbrush. So a good ultralight alternative, but still with a full handle, is one of these children's bamboo toothbrushes. I started using these a few years ago. You can usually find them in a pack of 2. These are made by a brand called Woo Bamboo. They don't weigh anything. It has a nice amount of bristles on it, a good amount to clean your teeth, and it has a pretty decent size handle. So it's not a huge handle, but I can still get back, brush my teeth without getting my fingers in my mouth. This is also small enough to pack down in my little kit with all the rest of my stuff, so it's not hanging out, getting dirty in the rest of my pack. I can seal this up in my little plastic bag with the rest of my hygiene stuff. So the kid's toothbrush is a way better option than having to cut off the handle or using one of these goofy little things, sticking your hands in your mouth, or carrying out a full-size toothbrush. And then with this, I started using toothpaste tablets. So for years, I would do what probably most of you do, and that is carry one of these travel size toothpaste tubes, which is fine. These work great. They're not crazy heavy, but the big thing is the fact that you're gonna take out all this toothpaste and you're just gonna end up using a very minimal amount of it, especially if you're just doing like a 4 or 5 day trip. So instead of taking all this toothpaste and not needing it, I can take one of these little pill bags that I got from like Walgreens or another type of pharmacy, and I can put exactly how many tablets that I need for every time that I wanna brush my teeth. That way I'm not carrying all this extra toothpaste. It fits down small, and when I'm ready to brush my teeth, I can pop one of these in, I chew it up, I use my kid's bamboo toothbrush to keep my teeth clean. So it's a great option for better, I guess, mouth care when you're out on the trail. And that leads me to my last 2 tips, I guess 1 tip or trick or hack that I have for you. And it comes down to one of the things that I get asked the most. And that is, what do I do about my beard on trail? How do I take care of my beard? And what do I do with my glasses? How do I keep my glasses clean? Have I ever considered wearing contacts? And what do I do about them fogging up? People are obsessed with these things. People ask me all the time. And I guess it's because my glasses and my beard are kind of my 2 main staples that you've seen for so much over the last 9 years. Well, to answer those questions, what do I do about my beard? What do I do about my glasses? It's absolutely nothing. All right, guys, there you go. Some tips or tricks or hacks that I had for you about hygiene, keeping clean on trail, trying to avoid injury, and trying to keep as fresh as possible. Hopefully some of these little goofy tips and tricks will help you guys along your backpacking journey. Whether you're just getting into backpacking or through hiking or just day hiking, maybe you can take something from all of these little things that I've done over the years. Speaking of that, what are some tips or tricks or hacks that you have to keeping yourself clean on trail? What are some hygiene hacks that you have? Leave them down below and let us know your thoughts. Guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I love you, and as always, thanks for watching.